afternoon, YouTube. How you guys doing today? Happy Saturday to you too, Short and Sassy Queen. So today, since I had time, since I hope a whole lot of us, a few of us anyway, have time, I want to present to you a conference that was filmed in 1987, I believe, and it was filmed by concerning a book. The name of the book is Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. The author of that book is Jawanza, I hope I'm saying his name right, Kunjufu. Jawanza Kunjufu, if you guys hadn't heard of him before, a little bit about him. He is a author. He has published over 65 books. He was born in 1953 in Chicago, Illinois. He now has a company named African American Images. He founded that company in 1980. There is a website if you want to go check out his website, because on his website you can see everything that he's publishes, everything that he has published out these many years later, as well as other educational needs if you're interested in that sort of thing. And he is a publisher. He is and a producer of educational workshops and films, right? And so today we're going to be sharing a little bit of video, but a lot of audio circa 1987 of an event that he hosted, a conference, if you will, discussing and breaking down, his arguments in the book, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. I have forever been trying. I knew I'd seen this video a long time ago, and I am just now coming around to finding it. And also on a side note, I haven't even clicked over to say hey to everybody. Also on a side note, that I believe now, that we have been for a minute been talking about Umar Johnson, and everybody's found out that he was scamming people now, all this and all that, unfortunately. But I think that he may have gotten his idea for the school for black boys from this author, Mr. Kunjufu. I really do believe that's where he got his ideas from. And as you're hearing him speaking, a lot of the points that he's making, in this event right here, it sounds like Umar Johnson got his motivation from Mr. Kunjufu, and I found that very interesting. I was like, wow, okay, so and he as well, and we know that Umar is in Chicago as well, right? Or is he in Pittsburgh or wherever he is? I think that he may have gotten his idea from Mr. Kunjufu, and it's unfortunate, but Mr. Kunjufu actually does the work. He's got plenty, many articles, on the subject of, the black, our black youth, not only our black boys, but our black girls as well as a dysfunctional, derelict, if you will, educational system when it comes to educating our black boys and girls. Okay, so I just want to, let you. He is 66 years old. He still lives in Chicago right to this day. And like I said, if you want to check out his website, it's www.africanamericanImages.com. And he has a lot of his work published there. In addition to being an author, he has a PhD in business administration, but he decided to be. His career has been an educational advisor, especially as it pertains to black boys and girls in our American public education system. So if you give me a minute, I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to share the audio of this event. But I still found one video. I found a video, but my computer be tripping. So, but alongside this audio, I'm going to try to play, excuse me. But alongside this video, I'm going to try to play the audio because it's very important. It's kind of long. It's like an hour, more than an hour and a half long, I believe. But I have been trying to share this information, like I said, for a long time, and I finally found a series of videos about what it is that I have been trying to show you guys for a very long time. The book is excellent, and like I said, he's like anything you can think about in the way of educating our youth. He speaks about in his books and his lectures. Dr. Kunjufu, I mean, he really did the work, and he has continued to this day to do the work. And unlike Umar Johnson, unfortunately, Dr. Kunjufu is the real deal. You know what I mean? I know this is not a popular subject, but I want to present it. I want it on my channel because I've been trying to find this series of videos for a very long time. And this conference is broken up into 9 to 10 minute intervals. And so I'm just going to share my screen here if I can. And and the reason why I want to play the audio, I'm gonna have this video running for. I think I just only is long enough to get his picture up here so that you guys can get a general idea of what he's talking about and who he is. But I'm going to play the audio because my computer be tripping when I try to play videos. My niece told me to clear the cookies on the darn computer, but honey, it is what it is. I told you guys the other day I need a new computer. So let me share this real fast if I could. If you guys can see it. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to start this first video as well as try to play the audio at the same time. And we'll get started. Okay. Oh, let me turn it up. Child.
National Educational Consultant, Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, especially for and to teachers and parents concerned with the well-being of Black children and their education process. In the first program, titled Developing Positive Self-Images and Discipline in Black Children, Dr. Kunjufu presents realistic guidelines and positive developmental concepts for helping Black children cope and achieve. That will be followed by Dr. Kunjufu's well-known workshop called Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, which is an in-depth look at the when, why, and what is preventing large numbers of Black boys from developing into strong, responsible Black men. But first, join Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu for his presentation of Developing Positive Self-Images and Discipline in Black Children.
Before we look at the workshop on developing positive self-images and discipline in Black children, my major position remains the same. I believe that children are actors, and they act out what they see in us. If the teaching 201 cannot get along to teaching 203, you have the exact same problems with children. If parents tell their children, don't do as I do, but do as I say, they have not taught them what's correct. They're taught them to be inconsistent. I repeat, children are actors, and they act out what they see in us. And I believe my workshops can be informative, but they cannot change attitude, and I'm very disappointed about that. I work hard with regards to research, but certain things cannot be changed, especially with regards to attitude. What am I getting at? As we begin to look at trying to close the gap or improve Black student achievement, my major concern is you cannot teach a child that you do not love. And there are large numbers of children in classrooms where they are not loved. I also believe you cannot teach a child you do not respect. And there are large numbers of Black children in classrooms where they are not respected. And then last but not least, I also believe you cannot teach a child you do not culturally understand. In other words, we have integration, or should I be clear, desegregation. But we have many teachers who don't understand the culture of Black children. And you cannot teach a child you do not culturally understand. The program is called Closing the Gap, trying to close the gap between Black and white student achievement, trying to increase Black student achievement. For example, the average white European child on the Iowa, California test scoring the 60th percentile nationwide. The average white European child in America on the Iowa, California test is scoring the 60th percentile nationwide. The average Black African American child in the same test is scoring the 30th percentile nationwide. Now, what explains this 30-point differential? There are at least 5 different reasons, and I'm in trouble if you give me more than the 5 I'm looking for. But there are at least 5 reasons for this gap. What do you think contributes to this differential between the average white child scoring the 60th percentile on the Iowa, California test and the average Black child scoring the 30th percentile on this same test? What are some of the reasons? Okay, your first name is Shirley. Couldn't you get a water break because you answered so quickly? So Shirley, I think it's number 4 on my list, and that's the cultural bias of the test. And Shirley, I like to call that the curriculum, not just the test, but the curriculum in terms of their cultural biasness. I want to also look at the issue of methodology, learning styles, and I want to look at what you just mentioned, and that's the evaluation design, the test itself. Any other reasons? beside the curriculum, methodology, evaluation, design? Any others? Yes. First name? Gwen.
Perhaps expectations
From whom?
from the teacher.
Okay. Very honest group, Gwen. Gwen, that's number 5 on my list. It's not that I'm placing this category because of its significance or importance. I simply want to save the best for last. I want to talk about everybody else first, and then we'll begin to talk about you. So Gwen, we'll be getting to you in a few minutes. Any others? Yes. First name?
Richard.
Richard.
Expectations from the parents.
Okay, and Richard, that's number 2 on my list. Parental involvement and support. I was wondering if this group would blame the one we love to blame the most. That's the parents. First name?
Lois.
Lois.
I think the child's expectations.
And Lois, do you mind if we also connect that to self-esteem for students? Okay, so in this case, we're looking at student self-esteem. Now, there's one more. There's probably a lot more. But the other one that we have to have in order to continue, and that's why we have it in the number 1 position. It's so easy so difficult to identify, and that's the peer group. We are very concerned about the peer group. Now, I'm very proud of this particular group because in most workshops across the country, beside these 4, and the one we were also looking for was the peer group, many times people say, well, it's ability. There's at least 1 or 2 persons in this audience to believe it's ability. And then every once in a while, we get someone who also looks at the environmental factors, racism, economic deprivation, sexism. And we acknowledge that. There's no way in the world these stats are not also affected by economic deprivation and racism and sexism. But see, in an hour workshop like this, we may not be able to change how Ronald Reagan thinks, or David Rockefeller, or Caspar Weinberger. We may not be able to change what white men make, $403 a week, and black women make about $234. We may not be able to change that. But we can change the influence of the peer group, parental involvement, student curriculum, teacher expectations. At least we can make an attempt at that. Now, as I said earlier, there's at least 1 person in this room that may think it's ability. I want to pause and look at this. Because if it's ability, then black colleges, independent black schools, the Effective Schools Project, magnet schools cannot produce a quality product. If it was ability, then black colleges that only receive 25% of the students, but produce 50% of the graduates, cannot produce that kind of product. And if you think they're inferior, those students that go on to graduate training at white universities and receive their degrees, 75% of them receive their undergraduate training in a black undergraduate school. So if it was ability, the same ability the other schools work with, then black colleges, independent black schools, magnet schools cannot produce a quality product. It is not ability. And since we cannot change environmental factors, let's now look at the other 5. Peer group, parental involvement, student self-esteem, the curriculum, and teacher expectations. We apologize for going as fast as we are. We're condensing a 6-hour workshop into about an hour. And the first area I want to look at is the issue of the peer group. What we're concerned with here is that we believe that schools are more than academic institutions. They are also social institutions. In other words, very few of us have been trained on monitoring the peer group. And yet this may be one of our greatest competitive influences on the minds of our children. It has gotten so bad that when black boys want to do a good job in school, they're labeled sissies. It's gotten so bad when black youth want to do a good job in school, they're called, you're trying to act white. And that's deep in 2 areas. First of all, here we are, the people that built the pyramids. First to read and write. And yet now we're going to attribute academic achievement to another race. That's problem number 1. The problem number 2, do you know how much pressure is on our youth? Trying to, on the one hand, please their peer group that has one set of values, and then please you, teachers and parents, with another set of values. A tremendous amount of pressure is on them. And we have to begin to understand that pressure. We were very much concerned about the Jackie Robinson syndrome. In other words, in the class of 30, we'll have our 1 or 2 black students in our gifted and talented programs, our honors programs, our AP programs. In other words, the Jackie Robinson syndrome all over again. In other words, we're going to take our 1 or 2 top black students and put them in the class of 30 students. Do you know what it's like being the Jackie Robinson of the class? And your peer group teasing you for being in there, and you have to be the only 1 or 2 in that kind of class? There's some other school districts who are trying to close the gap that realize if they want to increase the odds, stabilize black student achievement, 1 or 2 is not enough. In other words, some schools are now looking at, let's say, having 10 to 15 students in that kind of setting. So they can reinforce it, not just academically, but also socially. Again, a tremendous amount of pressure, being the only 1 or 2 in the class. And you know what some insensitive teachers in a setting like this, when they have to discuss a black issue, they ask the black child, well, what do you think about that? You know it's like being the only black child, having to be the authority on all black issues, and you don't want to be black, no way, no how? A tremendous amount of pressure. So if we want to increase the odds, we have to increase the number of students in those classes, because schools are more than academic institutions. They are also social institutions as well, and we have to begin to look at that. We also believe that competition is healthy. In other words, we are very much concerned that many of our children are shying away from academic competition, and they are very much involved in athletic competition. In other words, we believe that competition is healthy. We believe it sharpens your skills. We believe that there's a psychology of performance. Well, let's be clear. The fear of failure. Many black youth are afraid of competing in academic activities and more confident in athletic activities. And what's sad is many schools allow it, not just in ninth grade, as early as 4th and 5th grade. We have many black youth shying away from academic competition and more involved in athletic competition. As I said earlier, we believe that competition sharpens your skills. And we believe that our youth need to be involved in both of these two particular areas. In other words, in integrated schools, not desegregated, in integrated schools, these principals have told me if I have a 50-50 black-white school, then I don't want a 100% black basketball team and a 100% white science fair team or white debate team. And if it means going extra step, like the Boston Celtics, to get some white ball players, I'm going to do that. If it means going extra step to get some black students in debate and science fairs, I'm going to do that. Because they are committed to having students involved in both academic and athletic competition, because it sharpens your skills. And we are concerned about that. In other words, let's move away from the varsity approach to the academics, where you only have the top 1 or 2 students representing the school. We believe in the intramural approach. We believe in a class of 30 students, let's have 6 teams of 5 players. Let's have everyone involved in athletics. Let's have everyone involved in academics, because competition sharpens the skills. But you know what's sad? Even schools give more glory to their ball players than their scholars. In other words, for the basketball winners, they get these big trophies. For the debate team, they get these little certificates. Where are the pep rallies for the honor roll? In other words, we give them to the basketball team, but why not to the academic scholars and achievers as well? In other words, we are illustrating where our priorities are. We want to change that priority. We've got to find ways to infiltrate the peer group, to get them all involved in both academic and athletic competition. Some other ideas on this. The University of Michigan did a study when you and I were growing up, and they wanted to find out who was a major influence on children. The University of Michigan reports in 1950 that the greatest influence on children was the home, followed closely by school, then church, then peer group, then television. Now, Gwen, you probably call these the good old days. Home, school, church, peer group, and television. Hold your brothers, we give you 1980, 1985. Home is still number 1, but the streets, the peer group, that's what we're talking about, is now in the number 2 position. Television and video games are number 3, predicting number 1 sometime this year. School has now dropped down to the 4th position, and I'm sorry, you can't find church anywhere on a map. A whole lot has happened in 30 years. I want to again pause and look at the peer group, your greatest source of competition. In other words, the power of the peer group is because they look like each other. You will always emulate those people that look like you. What am I getting at? Connected to the classroom? I became a writer to make sure I'm not misquoted. A white teacher can teach a blind child math because expectations transcend race. Don't misquote me. I'm in no way saying that a white teacher cannot teach a blind child because expectations transcend race. But a white teacher cannot teach a black child how to be blind. In other words, in order to be a black engineer, you need to see a black engineer. The power of the peer group, they look like each other. In other words, when I ask black boys across the country to name me 5 black male entertainers, they don't have a problem. Name 5 black male athletes, they don't have a problem. But when I ask them to name me 5 black men with college degrees, they have all kinds of problems. In other words, that we cannot increase black staff at your school. Then what I recommend you do, like what St. Louis is doing, is have a central role model program. So we begin to bring in black role models on a regular basis. So we don't want to take the white teacher out of class, but if he or she has to stay there, then we want every week or at least once a month role models coming in so our youth can see black achievers. And we need to centralize that kind of program. The power of the peer group, they look like each other. Another secret about the peer group. You see, in most classes, let me do it this way. I'll use another sheet. In most classrooms, you have 30 students and you have one teacher. And it's almost 30 against 1. That's how it's phrased. 30 against 1. You always lose with odds like that. We have got to find ways to get the odds in our favor. In other words, I recommend that a teacher identify who the leaders are. You see, we must get them to buy into our value system. We must find ways to infiltrate the peer group, to inculcate our value system into theirs. And that, first of all, means identifying who the leaders are. Let me give you a secret. The leaders don't walk around saying, with a t-shirt, I'm the leader, I'm running the class. They do it with body language. They do it with eye contact. And so the first step is, do you know how to identify the leader? And then once you do, either before school, after school, or some break, pull him or her over to the side and try to inculcate your value system into theirs. Then they will begin to proselytize the other parts of the peer group. We have got to get more of the peer group buying into our value system. You see, the peer group does not have to be negative. It can also be positive. The question is, which value system they're going to promote. We have to begin to look at those kinds of issues. And so we recommend these kinds of strategies for the peer group. We recommend that, first of all, we begin to put more priorities on our academic achievement over athletic achievement. We also recommend moving away from the varsity approach to the intramural approach. We recommend that you identify who the leaders are. We recommend we bring in more role models to our program, provide pep rallies for academic achievement. But my major concern here is that schools are more than academic institutions. They are also social institutions. It is sad to say this, but you could have been doing your job. Parents could have been doing their job. And it all go for naught because the Black and Hispanic peer group are reinforcing what kind of gym shoes they wear, what kind of clothes they wear, how well they fight or dance, and not academic achievement. This is not theoretical. I was in honors classes when I was in high school. And I was so influenced by my peer group. I flunked the whole marketing period intentionally, trying to get kicked out. Had it not been for my father, who then kicked my butt, I'd had some very serious problems realizing his size 11 of my rear end was more important than my peer group. But let me give you a secret. When you want to reinforce academic achievement, especially for Black boys, it becomes suicidal if he's not also involved in the martial arts. In other words, I was still in honors programs, but I was allowed to run track and also martial arts because my peer group did not respect my honors achievement, but they did respect my martial arts development. We have to begin to look at those kinds of areas. Before we move on to the next area with regards to parents, any comments about the peer group? Its tremendous impact on academic achievement. Any comments or questions? You got 30 seconds, so I'm moving on. Yes, sir. First name? Michael.
What can teachers do to influence this in the context of the classroom situation?
Well, I tried to mention a couple, Michael. One, I wanted you to identify who the leaders were and begin to sell your value system to them. Secondly, I wanted you to bring more role models into your classroom so they can see Blacks in higher professions to advance themselves. Three, I wanted you to provide, or with your school, to provide more academic achievement in terms of glorifying that, in terms of pep rallies and trophies and the like. Any other comments about the peer group? A major source of competition. Another area, parents. We're very concerned about the role of parents with regards to our schools. And one of our concerns is a distinction between involvement and support. These two words are not the same, but they're used synonymously. We want to begin to look at that. Parental involvement and parental support. Parental involvement is attending a PTA meeting, baking baked goods for a bake sale, selling raffle tickets for a raffle sale. Look, if I never attend your PTA meeting, but I monitor my child's peer group, I monitor television, we go to the library on a regular basis, that's support. Now, I know you want them both, but between the two of them, I sincerely believe support is a lot more significant than parental involvement. But I do agree, after we get the support, we also need the involvement. So I've begun to look at Head Start, to begin to look at Chapter 1, to look at some effective principles in terms of what they do with our students. And I found there are certain things that they do. First of all, we have to find ways to market our programs. I often ask principals, how many parents are going to be there tonight when I speak to them? Well, I don't know. I sent out 1,000 flyers. That tells me right there, they don't know a thing about Black culture. Because the rumor is, if you want to make sure Black folks don't find out about it, put it in the book. In other words, we are not a written people primarily. It's the oral tradition. If you want me there, call me up. So 1,000 flyers may only generate 10 parents, but a personal invitation, a personal phone call, that's what Head Start does. That's what Chapter 1 does. So they use, first of all, the oral tradition. They find ways to communicate in other ways beside a printed flyer. And then secondly, Who determined what the workshop should be about? You see, most schools teach parents the same way they teach children. But we decide for them what the workshop should be about. That's a mistake. In other words, if you know that parents are younger these days, are less mature, are changing demographics, then before giving them a workshop on their child's development, why don't you give them one on their own development, on relationships? If you want Black men to be there, give them a workshop on the conspiracy to destroy Black boys or how to find a job. In other words, one school district in this country, Cleveland Heights, has a 50-50 Black-white school population, but a 97% white PTA. They wanted to bring me in to get more parents to come out, but they were concerned with the title. The title says developing positive self-images and discipline in Black children. If they kept the word Black in, the white parents may not show up. But if they don't keep the word Black in, the Black parents may never attend. They keep the word Black in and broke a record that night. And Black parents say it was the first. You finally gave me a workshop about me. Now, of course, let me be honest. There were very few white parents. There were only about 43 of them, about 400 Black parents. So the next day, at PTA Council, we're still working on how to get both groups together. But we at least solved the objective. We got more Black parents to come out. In other words, what I'm really getting at with regards to this is that Black parents have told me, Jawanza, I know I need to be there. But if all we're going to discuss is last month's minutes, some budgetary changes, and a couple of personnel changes with a boring speaker, I'm simply not going to be there. I gave you a clue, a boring speaker. Remember in the oral tradition, the strength of the Black church, a charismatic speaker. If you want Black parents to be there, not only have an interesting topic, but also the speaker has to be one that's able to keep their attention. It's unfortunate we have to do this, but we do. And we have to find ways to continue those kind of marketing efforts. And then, of course, there's always those we always can depend on. For example, providing food. It works almost every time. Providing childcare. It works the majority of the time. Providing transportation. If your meeting is at night in a low-income, crime-ridden area, you may need to provide security. And then the one that works every time, have the children perform. In other words, parents, Black, white, and Hispanic, and Asian, they all love to see their children perform. You know how many programs I've been on where the choir, not the class choir, the school choir sang before me. And then the person says, oh, and by the way, we're bringing Dr. Jawanza in for a 30-minute parent workshop. And to make sure you stay, and then the choir will then come back with their clothing selections. It works every time. We have to find those kinds of ways. And why do we have to do that? We have to do that because before 1954, when we had teachers who lived on the same block, who went to the same church. See, Black parents have always trusted the teachers. They've always felt that you were the primary educator. I'm now telling parents, unfortunately, you may not be the primary educator. You may not know what's best for their children. A little later on, we're going to discuss on the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. The Black children are 17% of all children in this country, but they're 41% of all the special ed children. Now, 17 doesn't equal 41. And it gets worse. If a Black child is going to be labeled EMR, LD, BD, 85% of the time, it's going to be a Black boy. And see, it's called a Stanford, where you have this white principal, white psychologist, white social worker, white teacher, or Black in skin, but not in consciousness, all telling this parent to sign on the dotted line. And because Black parents believe in you, they say, well, whatever you think is best. Now, white parents may agree to LD, but they're not agreeing to the worn-out curriculum of EMR and BD. Because they realize that they are the primary educators of their children. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't on the one hand say you want them to be the primary educator, and then when they question you, get offended. You know what they told me? I'm not comfortable talking to teachers. In other words, here we are with our BAs, MAs, and PhDs, and use that kind of jargon vocabulary with these parents. In other words, if you're so secure in your degrees, then why don't you communicate with them? I believe as Jesus said, what you do unto the least of these, you also do unto me. When you are educated, you know how to serve. Many of us are uncomfortable talking with these parents. And so we have to begin to work on those kinds of issues. But some other ideas, because our time is running so tight with regards to parenting. There's a rumor going around that low-income parents cannot produce high-achieving students. Do you believe that? There's also a rumor going around that single parents cannot produce high-achieving students. Do you believe that? And so we don't believe it either. So my book on images and Reginald Clark's book, Family Life and School Achievement, we looked at that. Low income, high income. Single parents, two parents. And what we found out was it was not how much money was in the home. It was not how many parents were there. What it boiled down to was the quality of the interaction. In other words, if you want to produce high achieving students, we identified 5 common characteristics. First of all, in the high achieving homes, these parents believe that the world is going to be better for their children. You know, in some homes, the parents are already downtrodden, already beaten, and they transmit a dismal attitude to their children. But not in high achieving homes. These parents say, well, it may not be all what I want it to be, but it's going to be better for my children. They first of all transmit hope. Secondly, in high achieving homes, these parents are consistent with their children. You know, in some homes, mama got one rule on Monday, another rule on Wednesday. Not here. There's consistency here. Third, in the high achieving homes, these parents are complimentary to their children. You know, in some homes, every other word is 4 letters. Not here. These parents praise their children. Fourth, in the high achieving homes, these parents give their children high expectations. And then last but not least, besides transmitting hope, being consistent, being complimentary, giving high expectations, these parents believe that they are the primary educators of their children. In other words, there have always been 2 kind of parents in America. There's a teacher-parent conference. You want to talk to the parent. Now, the first kind of parent, not in this study, will probably pass the buck. Will probably say, well, I don't know what to do with them either. I got some of my own problems. Can you solve some of mine too? The first kind of parent will pass the buck. But then you get the second kind of parent who listen to you very carefully. And upon conclusion, will say very softly, thank you very much for telling me about my child. Now, if you can just leave us alone for a moment, I can assure you, you won't have that problem anymore in life. Now, you leave the meeting. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but it must be like The Godfather, where the parent gave the child an offer the child could not refuse. Or as Bill Cosby tells Theo, on the first day of the show, I brought you in here, and I'll take you out. Now, these are the kind of parents we like to have more of. In other words, we want to come back and have a detailed workshop with your parents. It's a 16-step parent involvement program. And it first of all starts with establishing goals. So I believe if you're going to be a good parent, you have to establish goals for your children. And once you have goals for them, then you can go into stage 2, a home program. But you see, you can't even go into stage 2 if you aren't clear on stage 1. In other words, when I ask black and many parents what kind of goals they have for their children, I hear things like, well, as long as he don't beat me, as long as he gets a job, as long as he stays out of jail. Well, see, if your goals are weak, then your home program will be weak. I have 2 sons, 15 and 10. I only have 3 goals for them. First of all, I want them to put God number 1 in their lives. Secondly, I want them to be committed to the liberation of black people. And then third, I want my sons to be the employer rather than being the employee. Now, the question is, if these are the goals to my sons, what kind of game plan, home program, or strategy can I develop that will hopefully, that's it, hope, that's a key word. You see, I control the process. I don't control the result. It's like this workshop. How I give the workshop, my business. How you use the workshop, your business. There's no way I can ever guarantee any of this for my children. You see, I sleep good every night because I understand what I control. I control the process, not the result. But the question is, if my home program is my process, if I want them to put God first in their lives, should they go to church? Should they read the Bible or Quran? What do you mean maybe? If I want them to believe in God, they need to go to church and read the Bible or Quran. Hold on, we'll come back to you a little bit later on. If I want them to be committed to the liberation of blind people, should they begin to read black children's literature? Know that King's birthday is January 15th, Malcolm's birthday, May 19th, Gary's birthday, August 17th, and Kwanzaa in December. They should know that. If I want them to be the employer, should I also give some of my own homework? Not just rely on school homework? You know, we have children that know that 6 times 3 is 18, but when you give them a word problem, they don't know what to do. If you want to train a child, give the skill first. If you want to educate a child, give the need first. We have people with BAs, MAs, and PhDs out of work. Can't make nothing. They have been trained, not educated. We have to work on that. So these are just some of the kinds of ideas we want to share with you with regards to parenting. That we want them to believe they're the primary educator. And that means you have got to share some of the power. In other words, we can't on the one hand say we want them to be the primary educator. And then when they begin to question us, use our authority over them. In other words, it should be a 50-50 proposition with regards to this child's development. Any comments about parenting, the role it plays with regards to our students' achievement? Yes, is it Gwen?
Well,
Right.
in terms of helping parents with parenting skills, what do you recommend? You mentioned being where the parents are, and parents are getting younger. I'm thinking again in terms of parenting skills. where you, let's say that you are in an urban setting and you have many young parents and they don't seem to know which end is up. You talk about process.
And see, that's my point. Two things. One, I don't believe that there's not a parent in this country that does not want the best for their child. I sincerely believe that. But I also believe that before you deal with child development, you have to deal with self-development. When those parents that are 13, 16, 19, 21 and the like, they have not found themselves yet. And so before giving them a workshop on child development, we have to work with them on their own self-esteem, on their own relationship, on how to find a job. So I believe many times we would not ask them what kind of workshops they're interested in. And Head Start is more successful because they ask the parents what they need, rather than us deciding for them what they should have. Let me go on because of our time. Let me move to the third area, and that's one of my favorites, and that's the issue of student self-esteem. I sincerely believe that education is more.
Let me pause right here for a minute, guys. I just wanted to interject for a minute to let me change the screen. Just to say that I am going back and forth between, like I said, audio and video. Really, pretty much it's all audio because my thank you, God's grace, my my video player on the computer, it'll blink on and off, and I don't want to any words to be missed. Like I said, this is Circa. This video was actually recorded in 1987. His book, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, was actually published in 1982. And so I really want to get this audio / part video, down so that it may be able to help somebody, because the things that he's talking about in his book in 1982, as well as his seminar in 1987, I truly believe that these things are still relevant to us right to this day. And is the video is kind of old. Number one, it's humming in the background. That's not my phone. It's the video, it's the audio, because it's so old. And number two, some of his references, like I mentioned, he did like the Cosby Show reference and some of those other references. You could tell that it was set, back in the 80s, the mid to early 80s or whatever, because of some of the cultural references. And some people might not even have been alive back in 1982 or 87. And you may not know where he's coming from, but I just want to let you guys know that this is circa 1982/87. As far as the video and audio goes. And thank you guys for joining me. I know there's not many of us, but hopefully a few more people will, be interested in what Dr. Kunjufu is saying in the video / the audio, and they may want to listen to this full video as well as go to his website. Like I said, all of his work is on his website, his publishing company's website. He is an education advisor even to this day. He's out of Chicago, Illinois. Once again, his name is Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. Like I said, the name of he's got a website. His company's website, the name of it is African American Images, and it is based in Chicago, Illinois. And on that website, AfricanAmericanImages.com, you can find a lot of his work and a lot of his teachings and whatnot, on that website, if you are interested in listening to or learning about more of Dr. Kunjufu's books or, his teachings, his seminars or whatever, you can visit that website. So anyway, I'm going to finish, play some more audio for you guys, and I'll click back over to video after a while. And also, if you see a troll, give me a minute to find it, because when I click over to audio, I'm playing the audio on my phone, but when I am sharing the video portion of this, I cannot see the chat at all. So, but just, give me a shout out if you see a troll, and I try to get them out as soon as I click from, one device to another. I don't see any of my two moderators in here this morning, so I'm having to do it all by myself, but I'm using both of my devices. So anyway, let me share some more audio with you guys. And this is part 3 of his seminar on countering the conspiracy to destroy black boys. Okay. And once again, thanks for joining me, guys. Please hit that like button if you haven't. I know it's nothing but a few, but hey, it is what it is. So let's continue.
More than reading, more than writing is more than man. Should first of all teach our children who they are. See, if you don't know who you are, then you will not know what to do with your life. And if you don't know what to do with it, then you won't know how to achieve your goals. So Alex Haley raised the question of who am I? And he asked his mother, father, aunts, and his uncles who he was. Some people told Alex they were Negro. Some told Haley they were colored. Others told Alex they were black. Some said they were Afro-American. Some told Alex they were African, and lastly, some said American. Now, we have the only children and some adults that give 6 different answers to a very simple question like, who am I? Again, you cannot teach a child that is, first of all, not know who he is. It's more important than reading, math, and science. So we began to ask ourselves, why do Germans call themselves Germans? Why do Chinese call themselves Chinese? And we were told there's a land called Germany. There's a land called China. So let's go back to a world map. Germans are Germans, land called Germany. Chinese are Chinese, land called China. Let's go to a world map. Is there a place in the world called Negro land? What about color land? What about black land? What about Afro-American land? There's only 2 answers left, Africa and America. But be honest, what comes to most of our children's mind when they hear the word Africa? Tarzan? Running around, no clothes on? Be honest. And what about America? Red, white, and blue, and apple pie? That's because of this word right here, which is nothing but his story. You didn't know that? It's all history is somebody's story. You know what I'm talking about. Columbus didn't discover America. He was lost. And the end discovered him, and Abraham Lincoln didn't free any slaves. Well, no way to look at it, my story. It's very, very close to the word mystery, and I want to clear up a couple of mysteries right now. The book is titled Great People, Past and Present. What happened to a people that built the pyramids and yet now live in projects? What happened? What happened to a people that are the first to read and write using a term called hieroglyphics and yet now can no longer read or write? In essence, what happened to a people in terms of Egypt? It's amazing. King Tut came to America, and we didn't realize that King Tut was one of us. Somebody mysteriously took Egypt out of Africa and placed it in the Middle East. Now, how do you take a country out of a continent and then call it something else? As a result, we didn't realize that Egypt is in Africa. Egyptians are Africans, and we were the ones that built those pyramids. But my new history book, Lessons from History, Celebration in Blackness, for elementary, and there's also one for high school. You see, we are concerned about some issues here. The first one being, where do you start? You see, we have found that many black youth are embarrassed talking about the history. The Jews, now about the Holocaust, but us about slavery. I think one reason is where you start. The law says where you start will determine where you end up. Now, where do you want to start our children? If they started in 1619, they start on a plantation. That means they'll probably end up in a ghetto. But if you start 4 million years ago on a pyramid, they end up being free. Now, where do you want to start? On a plantation or on a pyramid? Because depending upon where you start will determine where they end up. Our first problem is we've been starting in the wrong place. And you cannot discuss 4 million years in 28 days. Black History Month. And I'm glad we got the month. It used to be a week. But you can't discuss 4 million years in 28 days. It's going to be not enough time. And then the other issue, what are we going to discuss? You see, if we're all we're going to discuss are names and dates and events, then you can do that in about 28 days. When was King born? 29. When did he go to DC? 63. When did he get the Nobel Prize? 64. When did he die? 68. That would never change. But if you want to make it relevant, you connect the past with the present and with the future. In other words, what were our mistakes? Because the mistakes you want to avoid, and the strengths you want to reinforce. I'll say it clearly. Those that don't know their history, don't know their mistakes, are destined to repeat it over and over and over and over again. Our children need to know their story, and it did not start here. And it should be more than just names and dates and events. But let me calm down and go on. There's still 2 answers left, Africa and America. But there's a tremendous difference between who you are and where you're born. My hometown, Chicago, the ex-mayor, Daley. If you had asked Daley where he was born, he'd said he was born in the USA. But ask Daley who he was. Ask him where his roots are. And he said his roots are in Ireland. Next stop, East Coast, Philadelphia. The ex-mayor there, Rizzo. If you ask Rizzo where he was born, he too would say the USA. But ask Rizzo who he is. Ask him where his roots are. And he says his roots are in Italy. But I think you know what I'm talking about. You and your husband, you and your wife are traveling across the world, and you're pregnant, and you gave birth to a child in Russia. Would your son or daughter be Russian? You're not sure? Next stop, China. And you gave birth to a child in China. Would your son or daughter be Chinese?
Nope.
Hold on. You still not sure? Suppose you gave birth to a child in an airplane in the middle of no place. What are you going to call your child then? Delta Airlines or United Airlines? Just because you're born in America doesn't make you an American. If someone asks you where you're born in America. But if someone asks you who you are, where your roots are, you gotta say African American or European American or Mexican American, but the who always comes first. Education is more than reading. It should first of all teach you who you are. But you know what else it should teach you? It should make you feel good about yourself. Now, the question is, what makes you feel good about yourself? What gives you strong self-esteem? Well, we believe first, your relationship with God. Second, unconditional love from your parents. Third, high expectations from teachers. Fourth, feeling good about your race, color of your skin, and texture of your hair. And lastly, knowing what your talents are. Because of time, I want to look at this one, the issue of race. There's a rumor going around that some of us, hopefully not in this room, are still using terms like good hair. And that to me is deep. You see, if you know what good hair is, then you must know what bad hair is. If you know what pretty eyes are, you must know what ugly eyes are. That's dialectic, the law of opposites. Our bestseller for children is called Colors Around Them. We believe that our children come in all different colors. But no matter what color they are beautiful just the way they are. Now, what I've noticed speaking to the primary grade children across the country, they clap for all of them. So the Emily is brown like chocolate cake and very pretty. And Robbie is red like cinnamon rolls and very handsome. The primary grades clap for all the children. But the upper grade laugh at Michael, who's black like licorice candy. And they also laugh at Joseph, who's black like ebony wood. Now, you would think that the older our children are, the greater self-esteem would be. But exactly the opposite. And my question to you, what is it about America's images where the longer these children live here, the less they feel about themselves? And remember, Renee is golden like a peach. And the upper grade clap for Renee, and they laugh at Joseph. Well, the reason is very simple. We allow somebody else to define for us what beauty is. If America defines beauty as light skin, long hair, and blue eyes is beautiful, haven't they told you what ugly is? It must be the exact opposite. It must be dark skin, short hair, and broad features. Once you know what is, you automatically know what's not. But you know what's amazing? When I was in Florida, I found Europeans trying their best to run down to Florida to get the suntan to look like us. And then I found us running over Noxzema and cream trying to look like them. You didn't know that racism is a sign of insecurity? People that are secure are comfortable with differences. Only insecure people, we need to rationalize because they are different. It makes them better. But let me tease you one step further. It's the first day of school, and Renee comes walking into your classroom with her pretty dress on, her hair floating in the wind. Like all the boys, Joseph comes in behind her. But on this day of accident, on his way to school, did not make it to the executive room in time. Now, do you sincerely believe that Joseph can learn as much as Renee? If you don't, you are unfit to teach our children. There are teachers who believe that Renee is smarter than Joseph. And when they believe that, she just becomes smarter than Joseph. Do you know how many black women, even in this room, can't swim? Afraid their head's going to go back? Go back to where? Where you afraid of going back to? This is deep. Do you think that what happened in slavery is over? Read Peculiar Institution by Kenneth Stamps, the slave-making process. We have to work on those kinds of issues. Before we go into our next workshop on curriculum, any comments about student self-esteem, the role it plays in academic achievement? I believe you cannot do a good job in school if you don't like the way you look. Yes?
That's deep.
Racial self-esteem within the peer group. For example, a boy saying she's good looking for a black skin or a dark skin girl or vice versa. How do you attack that in the peer group? What are some ways of looking at it?
I think we have to confront it head on. In other words, the real damage now is not done between white and black. It's done among the black peer group, black adult as well. And so we have to confront that. We have to show them the beauty and strengths of their color. In other words, we don't have time to discuss this afternoon, but what are the benefits of dark skin? What are the benefits of your natural hair? See, we hear all about the benefits of being light skinned or being white or having European style hair. What are the benefits of dark skin? There are a lot of benefits. Yes.
You mentioned that schools should have more than just read, write, and arithmetic.
Correct.
What effects do you feel that this new trend of back to basics, it says only teach math, reading, and writing, will that not eventually have an effect on how we teach black kids? Because boards of education are trying to get away from black history and Black History Month and all that stuff.
Well, I think that those progressive educators realize that back to basics doesn't have to exclude black history, that if the accent is on reading, we don't have a problem with that. We're also in favor of moving to phonetics rather than the sight approach and the word approach. So I don't have a problem with back to basics. But when you have back to basics, just be sensitive about the literature in which you choose. We have to begin to work on those kinds of situations. Because of our time, let me begin to move on. Our next workshop is on curriculum and methodology and learning styles. One of our concerns comes from James Banks, multicultural education. It's a code word now, multicultural. Now, my concern is if it's multicultural, not quote unquote white history, then we will no longer have world history through European eyes. We will put the event in the middle, and we will see what everyone says about the same event. In other words, we'll call this the Asians and Africans and the Europeans and the Hispanics and the Native Americans. I also gave you a clue. This is also the order of world population. We are not the minority. There are 700 million of us living in the world. Asians are first and we're second. We're not the minority. 80% of the world's population has color. We are not the minority. But the point I want to make here is, if the event goes in the center, not a people, but an event, then we go around the world giving each group an equal amount of time to give their side to the story. That's what will make it multicultural. For example, if the event was Columbus coming to America, Europeans would say Columbus discovered America. But the Native Americans say Columbus was lost and they discovered him. Same event, but these two groups see it different. Slavery. Europeans would say slavery was good for America. The Africans would say the black family was almost, not quite, was almost destroyed. World War II. Europeans would say World War II was good for the American economy. But Asians would say they were placed in camps in California. Same event, but these two groups see it differently. If it's multicultural, no group is in the center. But when you run the world, then you can do whatever you want. Columbus can discover America. Lincoln can be the one that freed the slaves. You can even make, if you want to, America larger than Africa. Africa is 2.5 times the size of the United States. But when you run the world, you can make America larger than Africa. You can even move Africa over here and put America in the middle. I challenge you, in your school system, do you have maps showing Africa larger than America? Do you have maps that show Africa in the center of the world? That's exactly where it is. A multicultural education. But beyond content, let's also look at learning styles. The work is from Piaget, from Asa Hilliard, from Janice Hale Benson, titled Black Children, Their Roots, Their Culture, Their Learning Style. Remember when you were in school, it's called a split brain theory. The rumor is to walk around with half a brain. The split brain theory. Remember, when you were in school, the rule was that instructors teach their subjects, but teachers understand how children learn. There are two sides to the brain. There's the right side of the brain, which is holistic. It sees everything. Very good in areas like music and in sports. That's the right side of the brain. But you also have the left side of the brain, very analytical. It breaks things into parts. Very good in math and in science. Now, it has been said in some private academic circles that people of color are better on the right side of the brain, and the people that lack color are better on the left side of the brain. Now, my question to you, did God go to sleep with black folks on the left, or wake up on their right? Did God wake up with Europeans on their left, or go back and sleep on their right? And before you answer, please remember, 86% of the NBA, National Basketball Association, starters are black. But only 1% of the engineers in this country are black. Isn't it true that all black folks can dance? That we all got rhythm? Is it physical or is it cultural? Come on now. Can't hear you. Cultural. Now, I agree with you, Terry, but our children don't. Our children believe, I could probably ask anyone here in Cincinnati in terms of the youth to go one-on-one with any white boy on a basketball court, they'd have no problems. They'll be scared stiff in the laboratory. I believe as you do. I believe it's culture. But our children believe they have a better chance of doing well on the right side of the brain. You see, my concern is that you do most will be that you do best. But more importantly, that you are allowed to do. We've always been encouraged to sing and dance and play basketball, but not to become involved in math and science. But remember, there are 5 ways to communicate an idea in a classroom. And those 5 are written, which is left brain, oral stories, right brain, pictures, right brain, fine arts, right brain, and artifacts, right brain. There are 5 ways to communicate an idea in a classroom. Most schools use an exclusive left brain methodology and a left brain test with large numbers of right brain thinking children. A tremendous tragedy. There are two ways to learn, left and right side of the brain. Now here's where the exercises go. If you want a left brain lesson plan, it goes like this. Read the definition. Write the definition. Purely left brain. Read it and write it. If you want to go from left, not to right, but left to whole brain, using both sides, read the definition and then draw what you think you just read. Then you'd have to integrate the left and right side of the brain. You know, we have people in this room with BAs, MAs, and PhDs, still drawing with stick figures, still drawing like fourth graders. It's not your fault. When you were in school, they belittled the right side of the brain. Let me give you a homework assignment. I want you to develop a right brain lesson plan and then evaluate it with a right brain instrument. We have got to find ways to meet our children where they are. They have a strength that we have not been using. And I wish we could have a lot more time on this major area of learning styles. But because of our time, we're now down to about 5 or 7 minutes. I want to now move into the best for last. I want to now look at teacher expectations. I want to now talk about you. I'm now quoting from the work of Wilbur Brookover and Ron Edmonds. They wanted to find out what was the major reason for academic achievement. I am proud to report third, not number one, is the student's socio-economic background. Some of us still keep believing, well, how much money is in the home? How many parents are there? It is not number one. It is third on the list. The second is the school per pupil expenditure. Some of us still keep believing, well, what color is the school bus? How thick is the carpet? But that is also not number one. How much money is in the school or in the home has never been number one. Number one has never changed. Number one remains teacher expectations. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, 1920. One-room school shed, 40 students. The roof was leaking. Only 2 books, and all 40 students learned. Beyond Piaget, beyond Montessori, beyond Glasser, beyond Goodland, education boils down to one word and one word only. Do you believe that our children can learn? That seems very simple. The key word is expectations. You know the program. It's called TESSA. Teacher expectation, student achievement. The theory is if you increase this, you increase this. What we found out was teachers are human. Many teachers lower expectations on 4 factors. Brookover gives those 4 as race, income, gender, and appearance. In other words, many teachers lower their expectations based upon the race of the child, the income of the child, the gender of the child, and how the child looks. One teacher wanted to give me a note that I want to share with you now. She also said, Jawanza, I know it's not right, but I also am affected by the parents show up. In other words, I've noticed I respond differently to certain children if I know the parents are involved. I know it's not correct, but that's exactly what I do.
It's a fact. 5
major areas that affect expectations. So again, the program is called TESSA. It goes into your classroom with a video camera, with your peers, with an administrator, trying to see if they can monitor expectations. And you know the 3 strands of TESSA. One is response opportunities. Another one is feedback. And the last one is personal regard. What TESSA attempts to do is to see if you can give all 30 children the same number of opportunities. TESSA believes you learn best when you're involved in the process. Now, this is very hard to do. If we were talking about a white teacher with 30 white children, or a blind teacher with 30 blind children, to give all 30 children the same number of opportunities to respond. TESSA believes this is necessary in order to grow and develop. Now, many teachers say is, well, Jawanza, the reason why I don't call on Willie is that Willie don't know the answer. Well, see, the problem is, when you stop calling on Willie back in October, if you wanted to call on him now in May, he wouldn't know the answer because he believes you're not going to call on him anyway. And then the other one I hear so much of, well, time is so tight. I can't afford to waste time on Willie. Well, see, the problem is, that may be correct in the short term. But when we talk about somebody's life that we're now destroying, that could be involved in prison later, in the long term, it's better to call on Willie now than having taken all that money from us in prison later on. We've got to begin to look at having all the children involved. And then the next area, feedback. 2 students, Willie, the low achiever, and the high achiever. You call on Willie first, he gets the answer wrong. You probably stay with Willie 1 second, then you go on to Ann. She also got the answer wrong. She's your higher achiever. So you stay with Ann a little long. Come on, Ann, you know it. And they begin to give clue and clue. 5 minutes later, Ann finally comes with the answer. In other words, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That Ann feels better about herself because you've given her more feedback, more reinforcement. And then, of course, the last one, the one I'm concerned about the most, and that's personal regard. That's attitude. Tessa believes you should touch the children. Let them know that you care. Let them know that you love them. So what happens? We send teachers to Tessa training, and they come back saying, I touched you. I love you. I like you. But the problem is the children know it's still not there. It's not real.
Yep.
This cannot be taught. You either love them or you don't. In Cincinnati or wherever we are in the country, please don't put all the schools in the same category. Ron Evans, before he died, developed the Effective Schools Project. What makes effective schools? There are three major factors. One, they have strong leadership. In other words, please don't think every school in Cincinnati or in Princeton County School District are in the same category. Because first of all, good principals spend very little time in their office. You see, the good ones are instructional leaders. They're involved in the classroom. They're involved in the corridors. In other words, they realize they should be involved in the educational process. They get there early and stay late. Paperwork done early. They get involved with the students throughout the day. Good principals also have workshops for their teachers, especially in the third and fourth quarter, when you begin to have teacher burnout. You don't need me now in August and September. Oh, but in January and March and April, where you have teacher burnout, there's some serious problems there. I know you're not going to like this. I also believe the principals should take their teachers out to lunch. Have Teacher of the Month awards. In other words, a good principal is a good coach. They have to find ways to keep their staff motivated. Good schools have strong leadership. Secondly, they have teachers, as I said earlier, who give high expectations. What am I getting at? It has been said that in low achieving schools, the most negative room in the school is the teacher cafeteria. Because in that room, you hear comments like this. You can't help these children. These children can't learn. And you know what happens? For the new teacher just coming in, they get swayed the negative way. But you see, in a high achieving school, the principal plants a spy in the teacher cafeteria. They want to know who's making those kind of comments. It's amazing. The good teachers in 201 and 206, you know what they tell me? They don't go to the teacher cafeteria. But the poor ones in 202 and 204, in there all day long. It's amazing how the negative forces do a much better job of organizing than the positive forces. And then the last factor, time on task. There are many schools giving children a lot more time on instruction than other schools. We have to work on these three areas: strong leadership, high expectations, and a lot more time on task. Closing point. There are three kinds of adults in our classrooms: instructors, teachers, and coaches. We have a lot more instructors than we do teachers. Let me define terms. An instructor means just that. I teach chemistry, teach geometry. I got mine, you get yours. And they mean that. They only deal with their subject matter. They don't deal with learning style. They don't deal with motivation, self-esteem. Not in that job description. I got mine, you get yours. Now, you know what's sad? With a high dropout rate, we have a lot more instructors in the upper grades than we need to. Second group, they not only deal with subject matter, but they also deal with learning style. They realize that children have different learning style. You know what teachers do? They give right brain lesson plans as well. And they use right brain ways to evaluate learning. Not just a test, but hands-on learning activities. And then the last group, they not only deal with subject matter, not only deal with learning style, but they also deal with motivation. They also deal with self-esteem. What am I getting at? You see, a coach understands. Here's how instructors do it. Class, turn to page 10. Now, the students probably turn the same level of enthusiasm you said turn to page 10. A coach realizes, I can't teach these children. They, first of all, don't believe I have something to offer them. So a coach would close the book and begin to ask, what do your adults tell you? You know what I found out? They say two things. One, get a good education. And the second thing you tell me is to work hard. So then we ask the young people, what do you want to say? Well, get a good education for what? And work hard for who? Now, these to me are two very good questions. If working hard was the solution, blind people should be running the world. Do you know anybody who's worked harder than us? Our children are tired of being an employee. Quit telling them to get a good education, to get a good job. Teach them they can also be employer. But the real issue here, as our time begins to run down, a good education. They watch you with your good education. But many of us work a J-O-B. Now, if all the good education got you was a J-O-B that you don't like, that means you never end up living for T-G-I-F money. Now, if all you have to do is motivate them with some money, our children are sharp. There are other ways to make this besides a good education, with the four main sources being drugs, sports, music, and crime. You are not going to motivate black youth if all you have to offer them is money. Closing point, the issue is not money. The issue is talents. You didn't know? I'm at work right now. You see, if you have a job, you watch the clock all day long. But if you have a career, then you know where your talents are. And you love what you do so much, you'd be willing to do it for free. But because you do it so well, you get paid for it. Last question. I want all the instructors to raise their hands. I want all the teachers to raise their hands. I want all the coaches to raise their hands. Very good. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a strong round of applause.
That was awesome. Okay. Don't know if let me click back over for a minute. Okay, coming up. Okay. So now he's going to start the portion of the seminar on the book, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. And this is the part of the video that I really want, video and audio that I want you guys to hear. So while he's doing that, while he's preparing, I'm just going to try to blank back over here and see what's going on. Hey, Hoodoo. All right, now we are starting
And now, here is
the
Dr.
book
Jawanza
portion.
Kunjufu with his penetrating presentation of Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys.
And I'm going back and forth between audio and video, guys.
There's no topic that concerns me more than the one on the conspiracy to destroy black boys. And the reason is when our little boys are in preschool and primary grades, they're very innocent and very enthusiastic about learning. But something happens to that, and we need to find out what that is. My younger son is on the cover of this particular book, and I would like for him to grow up to be a man. Like many of you already told me, that you have sons and male students as well. Now, there's two parts of the conspiracy, Volume 1, and this is Volume 2. In Volume 1, we raised 4 questions. First question is, when did the conspiracy start? Who is against black boys? Why is there a conspiracy against them? And what exactly is the conspiracy? That's in Volume 1. In Volume 2, we look at the relationships between mothers and their sons. That must be studied. We also must look at female teachers and black male students. That must also be studied. We must look at some case studies. In other words, many of us are doing a very good job developing black boys to be men. What is it that some of us are doing that others are not doing? And then last but not least, a program called the Rites of Passage into Manhood. See, it used to be we knew when black boys became men. But now many of us don't know when we're men. It's how much reefer we smoke, how much wine we drink, how many babies we make. Until black men spell it out to black boys what it means to be a man, this conspiracy will continue. But let's go back to Volume 1. When did it start? And as we begin to look at that, I want to also share with you why we call it a conspiracy to destroy black boys. You see, contrary to belief at birth, there are more black boys born in the world than there are girls. It's close, but it's 1.03 black boys born in the world to 1.0 black girls. Hear me clearly. At birth, black boys outnumber black girls 1.03 to 1.0. A brief 18 years later, it is now 1.0 available, and that's the key word, available black men, to 1.8 available black women. Almost 2 adult women for every 1 adult man. Now, the only question that should be going through your minds right now is what happened? We keep raising the wrong question. We keep asking, why do black men hang on corners? Why do black men lack direction? Well, if you ask this question, you answer the question 18 to 30 years too late. It is not a conspiracy to destroy black men. It's a conspiracy to destroy black boys. If you destroy him as a boy, he'll never become a man. Now I can look around the room and tell you know where are they. If they are not available to black women, where are they? Call the roll. In jail, there are 329,000 brothers in prison right now. 1 of every 4 brothers will go to prison. Where else? Or death. There's numerous ways that we die. There's homicide, suicide, drugs, war, high blood pressure, and the leading killer among black men, lung cancer. Our love for cigarettes, especially cool. Smoke them all day long, die the exact same way. Cool. Where else? We have prison, death. What else to make us unavailable to black women? Yes, homosexuality. As you said earlier, 1 of every 9 men in this country are homosexual.
Wow.
Where else? Yes.
Hospitalized, institutionalized.
Okay, so institutionalization, and there's not only in terms of hospitals, but also mental institutions, and of course, when they get released, many times being homeless. There's still one other large popular area. Limby?
They marry white women.
Okay, interracial marriages. Now I want to pause here for a moment, because you would think if is going to marry outside the race, it will be black women. You got 2 black women for every 1 black man. But it's, let me point out, it's exactly the opposite. There are 164,000 interracial marriages, of which 116,000 are brothers. That means 48,000 sisters. It's almost a 2-to-1 ratio of black men to black women marrying outside the race. But remember, as you said in the earlier workshop, if the definition of beauty is light skin, long hair, and blue eyes, why stop with Renee, the light-skinned sister? Why not get you the real thing? There's some serious problems here. And then black men tell me, I can't find a black woman to understand me. You mean out of 20 million black women, you can't find one to understand you? You don't need a white woman, you need a psychiatrist. But that's another workshop on relationships. But I just want to share with you, we got some very serious problems. But to tease this audience, black women are tired of being by themselves. And in the earlier issue of Essence magazine, the article said, guess who's coming to dinner now? Black women are tired of being by themselves. In other words, brothers, you can't have it both ways. You can't have 2 black women to choose from and still marry a white woman. You can't have it both ways. Black women are tired of being by themselves. Now, that's with regards to the stats, why we wrote the book, because we saw the shortage of black men. But we want to begin to find out is, when did it start? You see, it's called the 4th grade syndrome. Studies show that black boys may be the best students in the country up until the 4th grade. So we wanted to find out what your son, a male student, was doing at the beginning of the 3rd grade, then at the end of the 7th grade, and then measure the progress. Let me give you 3 examples. We had a little boy 5 years ago on our reading test score at the 98th percentile in the country. In other words, a walking genius. That means only 2% male, female, white, or black.
Let me pause this right here for a second, guys, because I just wanted to interject. Because his I believe that the stats that he's showing, we know for a fact that they are even greater now. And also the stats that he was showing in 1987, they were prior to the onslaught of gang violence, and it was also prior to Hillary Clinton's super predator, mass incarceration agenda. Do you see what I'm saying? It was prior to all of that. So we know that the numbers are even greater now when it comes to how many women versus how many black men available that we have in the community. He even mentioned homosexuality back then. He mentioned everything except the onslaught of the drug wars and the gang violence. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's because he was doing this, and this was filmed in 1987. And I just want to pause and let everybody know that the ratio between black men and black women is greater than 2 women to every 1 black man. It's now estimated between 7 and 10 heterosexual black women per 1 black heterosexual man. The numbers are even greater now because of a few of those factors that I mentioned before. And he also is even in 1987 talking about the high ratio of interracial relationships, which dwindles, which make our numbers, our pool of heterosexual black men, along with everything else. That factor of interracial dating, it directly contributes to there not being enough black men to accommodate black women. Okay, and so that's what he's talking about. But I just want to interject because this is from 1987, and the numbers are far greater, nowadays. So let me try to start this. And also, in case if you're just coming in, I'm going back and forth between audio and video. I'm playing our audio, but I will go back and forth with the video. Do you see what I'm saying? So anyway, let's continue.
Hey, oh no! At the beginning of the 3rd grade. At the end of 7th grade, the same boy now drops down to the 30th percentile. Engineer potential here, pimp or pusher now. Scores should have improved 5 years. Instead, they only improved 1.3. 2 more examples. We had a little boy at the 92nd percentile. He dropped down to the 24th percentile, and his scores only improved 2.1. But let me give you the average example. We had a little boy at the 63rd percentile. He dropped down to the 4th percentile, and his score didn't improve a year, a month, a week, not even a day. There are 3 critical stages in black boys' development: infancy to 9, 9 to 13, and 13 to 18. You see, it's easy to see the negative behavior here when he's already dropped out, laid up on some street corner lacking direction. It's more difficult to see it around 9 years of age, when they begin to sit further in the back of the class, when they begin to ask less questions, when their ball becomes more important than their book, when they begin to cheat on their tests. We appeal to you to turn your sons and male students on early. Teach them how to read early. Teach them the beauty of being black and believing in God early. But many of us have waited, and we waited almost too late to develop black boys to be men. You know what I'm getting at. America spends $2,300 on Head Start. They spend $38,000 on prison. If Reagan wanted to balance the budget, I can show you save about $36,000 per person. It's much easier to educate than it is to incarcerate. Now you raise the question, how long do you stay in Head Start? A year? 2 years at the most? How long do you stay in prison? The rest of your life? Question number one. Question number two, does Head Start work? A 19-year study documents that Head Start works. But in prison, 85% of the inmates that get released go right back in. But as Jesse Jackson says, we have two choices. We can either send me to Penn State or to State Penn. It's your choice. We have got to find ways to intervene. Now, we have a whole workshop just on the 4th grade syndrome. I now want to ask you, what are some of the reasons you feel to explain why black students, especially black boys, were doing so well K through 3, and now scores declining in the intermediate and upper grades? What explains it? Yes.
The learning style changes abruptly in 4th grade from what might have been more right brain activities in the primary grades into all of a sudden all left brain activities.
Okay, so a change in learning styles or methodology from the teacher, from a holistic learning style to a left brain. Okay, very good. Any others? Yes.
I think that there's a lot of rejection on the part of the female teachers in the classroom.
And the rejection increases with the upper grades? Why do you think it increases?
Because of the students, perhaps his natural makeup, hyperactivity, and that sort of thing.
And that may be increasing. Well, it may be increasing because we're now expecting them to stay in school or stay in a chair even longer. Okay. Any others that contribute to this 4th grade syndrome? We have a change in learning style. We have the teacher's outlook on the student. What else? Yes.
The student becomes more culturally aware and differs significantly from the teacher often.
Okay. So the child's now becoming more aware of their cultural and racial identity. Okay. Very good. Any others? The major reason you have not given yet, and maybe that's why this problem is still with us, Terry. First name is Richard. I'm sorry, Richard.
Well, peer group starts to form and become stronger about the peer group.
And that's unfortunate, Richard, that you said that, because as the age increases, peer pressure is on the increase, while parental involvement is on a decrease. I don't know who told parents when your child gets older, they need less of your time rather than more. When I speak to Head Start parents, 80% of them are there. Elementary school, 30%. High school, almost a joke. We have to work on that. That's another workshop, too, on parenting all the way through. Not just in those quote-unquote tender years. But the major reason, it's not on the board yet. Still looking for it. Yes. Gwen?
I think, too, that young boys, and particularly young black boys, in the primary grades, they have many mother figures, and they have very few men figures, and particularly black male figures. And I think it makes a big difference come grade 4.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's the major reason. And let me now get my first position. I sincerely believe that only men can make boys men. Now, don't misquote me. I didn't say that a single female parent or female teacher cannot rear or educate her child. But she need not do that by herself. But she calls upon her father, her brother, an uncle, a male neighbor, a nephew, a co-worker. There needs to be some men in our children's lives. I want to explain to me how a boy is going to grow up to be a man if he's never seen any. In order to be anything, you must see it first. Remember in the earlier workshop, and I'll go through this very quickly, from the University of Michigan, we wanted to find out what the major influence on children. We said 1950, it was home, school, church, peer group, and television. And then we gave you 1980. Home was still number 1, peer group in the number 2 position, television 3, school dropped down to number 4, church last on the list. Let's go back to my statement. My statement said that only men can make boys men. Now let's see where black boys are going to find men. Let's first of all look at his home. 62% of all black children live in a single-run household. It's a very good chance we will not find a man here. I'm going to hold off on the streets and drop down to television. Can you name me 5 positive adult black men on television outside the news? And you can't name Cosby because the show just started. Name me 5. Outside the news. And you better not say George Jefferson. So they find very few black male role models on television. Now let's drop down to the schools. 83% of all elementary school teachers are women. 95% of all teacher aides are women. And when do men teach? After the critical fourth grade, or they're in the upper grade, or they're the PE teacher, the janitor, or the principal. Very few before the fourth grade where black boys need them the most. And lastly, the church. Most young people, men don't go to church. And the reason is we lie to them. First of all, we made Jesus Christ white. The man surely was not white. We have a book called What Color Was Jesus to explain that. He had hair the texture of wool and feet the color of bronze. But secondly, the Lord's Prayer says on earth as it is in heaven. Young people and men want some action. They want some programs. If there are no programs in your church, they will see you later in heaven. As a result of not finding a man at home, few on television, few in school, and not wishing to attend church, the last place is the streets. And that's the problem. The streets do a very poor job making men. They do a better job making pimps, pushers, and a few basketball players. Their hero, Michael Jordan, has said there were 1 million brothers that won his job last year in the NBA. Of this million, only 400,000 will even make it to play high school ball. Of this 400,000, only 4,000 will make it to play college ball. Of this 4,000, only 35 will go to the coveted NBA. Of this 35, only 7 start. And the average life in the NBA is 4 years. You got 1 million brothers looking for 7 full-time jobs that last 4 years. Wow. This conspiracy is complex. It goes beyond the NBA. Even schools are in on it. What will be the first thing you see when you walk into a Cincinnati high school? Enlarged trophy case. And that was even schools give more glory to their ball players than the scholars. That's said in the earlier workshop. Where are the pep rallies for the honor roll? In other words, even school, I can understand the NBA, but even schools give more glory to their ball players than their scholars. This conspiracy goes beyond the NBA, though. It goes beyond schools. Jesse Jackson is giving you the clue one more time. Is it not possible for a black man to be president? For a white woman to be president? For a black woman to be president? Is the club only reserved for European men? You didn't know that a white boy with a high school diploma makes more money than a white woman, black woman, or black man with a college degree? The motive for the conspiracy is clear. For the question of why is there a conspiracy, the answer is white male supremacy. In other words, white men are not afraid of women, black or white, because women have no power anywhere in this world. The threat to European men will come not from women, it will come from other men. And the best way to destroy black men is to destroy them as a boy. The motive is white male supremacy. But before you get comfortable blaming somebody else, let me make sure we're clear. On a conspiracy, there would always be two. You see, you have the active conspirators and you have the passive conspirator. See, it's like child abuse. There were always two. You have the father who does the beating, active. But you have the mother who turns her back, passive. Isn't apathy, indifference, low expectations, buying hot goods in the black community, isn't that also part of a conspiracy? You have the active and you have the passive. In a conspiracy, there will always be two. Let me now give you the starting line. We'll start with the active ones first and then move to the passive. Leading off, batting in the #1 position, representing this country, institutional racism. Batting first is Ronald Wilson Reagan. He bats in the #1 position. Batting second, representing the Trilateral Commission, the Fortune 500, big business. David Rockefeller bats #2. Batting third, representing the military complex. You didn't know, black people, 12% of the population, 1/3 of the military, and died 41% of the time in the Vietnam War. Caspar Weinberger bats #3. Batting fourth, and I don't mean Marlon Brando. I mean the real godfather. Drugs running rampant in the black community. Please don't deceive yourself. If America is the #1 power in the world, they could police their borders to stop the drug traffic. These men and what they represent intentionally want to make sure the black boys never grow up to be men. But remember, they got some help from some of us who really like black boys, who may even have black boys at home, just didn't know any better. And so we bat #5 through 9. Batting fifth, not all, but some mothers who raise their daughters and love their sons. Batting sixth, some female teachers who don't understand that boys have different learning styles than girls. Batting seventh, representing the media in this country, shows like Gary Coleman and Webster. Shows that make me sick. Shows that illustrate that black men cannot raise intelligent black boys to be men. In other words, we need a white father for Gary Coleman and for Webster. It's all part of the media image. It goes all the way back to Tarzan, all the way back to Superman, all the way back to Rambo, to Rocky, all part of white male fantasy trying to control the world. It's all part of a scheme. Make sure you heard me. It's consistent with Superman, Tarzan, Santa Claus, the white father, all part of that scheme. Batting 8, the macho image, Mr. T, and we'll look at today someone like Prince or Magic Johnson or Isaiah Thomas. In other words, no need to study, just be macho, just be a superstar. In other words, Mr. T, Prince for entertainment, Isaiah Thomas the Magic for sports. And then last but not least, a black woman by the name of Kathy, who will do anything for a man, and a black man by the name of Willie, who does not feel good about himself. You see your faces right now. Who's Kathy? You have to stay to the end to find out who's who. The starting lineup, Reagan, Rock. No, you don't know who Willie is, though. We got a new theory for you now. We used to end with Donna and Kathy, but now we're going to give you the Eddie Willie theory. We have a new one. So we have we have Ronald Reagan, David Rockefeller, Caspar Weinberger, the Godfather, some mothers. I didn't say all, some. Some mothers, some female teachers, the media image, macho in sports, and Kathy and Willie. These people and what they represent, intentionally or subconsciously, want to make sure that black boys never grew up to be men. Let's now look at the active ones first. I want to make sure we start in the right place. The conspiracy did not start with black mothers. It started somewhere else. We must start where it began. It began with active conspirators. I want to now look at them first. In looking at the active conspirators, I want to make sure we understand that these kind of terms don't make sense. We are not the minority. In other words, there are 4.5 billion people living in the world. Of this number, 80% of the world's population has color. That means only 20% of the world's population lacks color. Now you tell me who's the minority. See, it's called the African triangle. It goes all the way back. We're not the minority. We're only a minority. We allow ourselves to be divided up from our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, in Jamaica, in the United States. Look at this African triangle. After all these years, other than the way we're dressed, you can't tell who's who. There are 1 billion people living in China alone, and we are second. 500 living in Africa, 160 living in Central and South America, 40 million living here in the United States. We are not the minority. Now, the question is, how can so small control so much? That's why I respect them so much. Think about it. You have a game. You have one game, people, another game with 20, and the 20 going to win? The only way they can do that is by controlling the mind. Because whoever controls the mind will also control the body. Let's look at this. Let's break this down in half. What you come up with is 10% European women and 10% European men. See, it's not even 20. It's really 10% European men. In other words, Reagan, Rockefeller, Weinberger, Gorbachev, both they want to control not their countries. They want to control the world. And they have pulled this off. Now, there's a tremendous amount of pressure when you're this small trying to control so much. Now, maybe you can't understand it. It's been a long time. It goes back to Egypt for us, having that much power. But can you imagine that small number trying to control the world? A tremendous amount of pressure is on that small group with that much power. In other words, the first thing that men are taught to do is not to cry. According from their own Goldberg, the book is called The Hazards of Being a Male. The tremendous pressure when you're so small trying to control so much. The first thing that men are taught to do is not to cry. Think about it. Ever seen Ronald Reagan cry? John Wayne cry? They died with their boots on. They died in their saddles. They died like men. Now, any psychologist will tell you that crying may avoid suicide later. But as a result of European men not crying, European men commit suicide more than anybody else. Black men who want so much to be like European men are very close second. European women are third, and the most sane person in America, she don't make no money, but stay close to God and her children and cry. Black women commit suicide less than anybody else. Give yourself a hand clap. In other words, if you think that money is the source of all your happiness, they make more money than anybody else. But they obviously are not happy. In other words, money may not be the key. Putting God and your children first may be the key. Poorest people in America commit the less amount of suicide. First thing men are taught to do is not to cry. Second thing men are taught to do is to ignore pain. Got hypertension? Shake it off. Cancer? Shake that off too. Monday Night Football. Walter Payton goes off the field with a busted knee. Comes back on a half hour later in the Holocaust cells. Oh, what a man. The man was crazy to go back on the field. But see, men are taught to be macho, to ignore pain. Not women. When women's finger bleeds, to the doctor's office. Women take care of themselves, but not men. You know, it's gotten so bad that studies have now documented that when men are married, they live longer. That's an insult to my intelligence. It means that I cannot live long by myself. I gotta leave my mama and go to my wife. Because if I don't, I'm probably gonna smoke cigarettes, drink liquor, and eat a lot of pork on the streets. But with women, annual checkup, that's what they encourage men to do. Drink a regular amount of water and eat a salad on a regular basis. What am I getting at? European women say they're so oppressed. European women lived at 77 years of age. Black women lived at 75 years of age. European men die at 69 years of age, and black men die at 64.8. Albert, you and I die before the first Social Security check. That law needs to be changed. The Lord for us. We are living long to collect on the payment. This is sad. I'm gonna die 10 years before my wife. This is not theoretical. It's not just my son here. It's my life here and your life. Can I not live as long as my wife? 10 years before her? Men are first of all taught not to cry. Secondly, they're taught to ignore pain. And then last but not least, they're taught to bring home the bacon. What I say is the vegetarian to bring home the fruit and the vegetables. In other words, to bring home the money. Ronald Reagan knows this. Rockefeller knows this. That the best way to destroy black men is to deny them the opportunity to work. You know what I'm getting at, because Bill Moyers didn't tell you that was Vanishing Black Family documentary. 1 of every 3 marriages in this country, black or white, ends in a divorce in 18 months. Now, you see, it used to be if you got divorced, something was wrong with you. But when you have a stat this high, something must be going on in our society. I now want to explain what that is. When America believed in agriculture, America believed in extended family. When America believed in the factory, industrialism, America believed in the nuclear family. But now that America believes in the computer, now America believes in a single parent family. Make sure you see my analysis. When the economy changed, the family structure changed. There was more than love in these relationships. There was some money involved here. Our grandparents worked the fields together, had economic reason to stay together, and so they did. In a factory, man works in factory, woman takes care of children. Economic reason again to stay together. But in this new economy, where you now have women working just as much, if not more, than men, you now hear women telling men, I don't need you. Got my own job. Do what I want to do when I want to do it. And we're now doing it very well and by ourselves. You know the #1 song in America a couple of years ago, Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent. If you want to be with me, you got to have a job. It's all about money. All about money. When the economy changed, the family structure changed. And so now we have a lot of people making plenty of money and low. They're putting some money before a family. You see, black men want to do what white men do. Buy their family a house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and once a year go down to Orlando for Disney World on vacation. And when black men can't do that, they don't feel they're worthy enough to stay. Now you see, the problem is there are 2 responses black women can give to black men when they're out of work. Now the first response some women say is, well, if you ain't working, you got to go. If you ain't working, you got to go. That's a mistake. Because black men don't hire nor fire, nor control the means of production. Now, before black men say, that's right, brother, you tell them. Please, brothers, quit assuming that black women took our jobs away. Because black women also do not hire nor fire. We are being played off against each other for some crumbs. We recommend the second response. For black women to say to that man, well, if you ain't working, can you at least go back to school? Can you at least learn a skill? Or at least make dinner or wash dishes while I'm gone? But the problem is there are very few black men that look to black women for definition of manhood. Black men, as I said earlier, want to do what white men do. And that means be the breadwinner. What I'm getting at is we're going to have to redefine what it means to be a man. Because if being a man means being the provider, with 25% of black men out of work, that's a suicidal definition. You see, if I lose my job tomorrow, I'm still a man. As long as I'm responsible, treat my wife correctly, raise my children, that's responsibility. I'm not going to allow my employer to reduce my masculinity. I need to define what being a man is. And I think it's a perfect balance between the mental, the spiritual, and the physical. Not being a breadwinner, but a balance between the mental, physical, and the spiritual. Isn't it interesting? You have 2 black men. Both lose their jobs. One black man resorts to crime, leaves his home. He's been reduced by their society. The other black man sells newspapers, sells peanuts, does whatever he can to take care of his family. Same economic situation, but a different set of values. We have to work on that. A new definition can resolve this problem. I'm not belittling money. You have to have money living in America, but that's not the criteria for man. Boys make babies. Men take care of them. That's the definition. One more comment here. I mentioned earlier in our past workshop on the peer group. Let me share with you here this dichotomy where you have the mental over here and you have the physical over here. See, a real problem is our boys have a difficult time finding a balance in the middle. I mentioned earlier homosexuality, and the figure is 1 of every 9 men in this country are homosexuals. It's going to increase. And the reason is because we've been so skilled to the physical, being macho.
Prophecy.
So when our boys want to be on the honor roll, they'll label sissies.
Kissed it to
Want to be
y'all.
involved in the fine arts? Label
Prophecy.
sissies. Want to be open, honest, communicative? Label sissies. When you label something long enough, you begin to act that way. So you have the homosexuals over here, and you have the athletes, the machos over here. Tremendous dichotomy between these two. We have got to find some men that can teach black boys and Hispanic boys the balance between the physical and the mental.
Wow.
There's going to be too much pressure over here. It's hard to find the balance, and women can't teach this. Only a man can do this. Okay. We need more black men who can do both of these areas. Physically balanced and mentally balanced. And spiritual in the middle. Comments, questions about what is a man? We've been looking at male behavior. Any comments or questions? Yes, Gwen?
Explain what you meant by saying women raise their daughters.
Matter of fact, I think it's probably the next point. Matter of fact, it is. Praise the Lord. Let's go to the next point. See, we were looking at the active conspirators, and we're looking at what the effect that causes on us in terms of male behavior. And we may not be able to control or to change Reagan, Rockefeller, Weinberger, but your question we can change. We can look at some mothers. And I said some, not all. The rumor is that some mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. My boy always loved his mama. 40 years of age, still went home with you. That needs to stop. Your boy is not yours. He is a future husband, a future father, and needs to be raised that way. Now, what do I mean by raised? Teach your son how to cook, to make up his own bed, to clean up his own bathtub ring because you raised your daughter. On the honor roll, every marking period. Goes to church with you every Sunday, and she can cook, sew, iron, and clean all, but then we have your son. Ain't never seen an honor roll. He plays basketball all evening long. Never goes to church and can't boil a hot dog. The rumor is we have some, not all, raising their daughters and loving their sons. Now, I know the historical reason. The historical reason is our societies always try to destroy black men. The lynchings. So black mothers always want to overprotect their sons. What's the reason today? I know the KKK is on the rise, but what's the reason today? Is it because your own black man didn't stay? You now replace your man with your son? Your son is not yours. He's a future husband, a future father, and needs to be raised that way. Quit telling these 9-year-old boys they're the man of the house. Ain't no 9-year-old boy ready to be no man of the house. Right. But because you told him that, he now begins to wonder. When you then bring over your man for the evening, Mom, I thought I was the man of the house. Why are you bringing him over? You can't have it both ways. If he's going to be the man of the house, quit bringing your boyfriend over on Saturday nights. You know what's sad, though? These brothers think what they can do with their mamas, they can do with their teacher, their coach, and everybody else. In other words, living at home with you in a $100 pair of gym shoes, $80 pair of a Gucci handbag. In other words, these boys have mastered how to manipulate their mamas. And they think what they can do with you, they can do with everybody else. Only to find out what you let them get away with, no one else does. In other words, 90% of all teenage pregnancy programs counsel the women. We have teenage pregnancy running rampant. But as far as the last time I looked, it took 2 to make a baby. But 90% of the programs let the brothers off the hook. The real question is, who is going to teach black boys to be responsible? And you don't start when he makes a baby. In other words, the real question is, who's going to teach black boys to be responsible for his personal hygiene, for his clothes, for his chores, for his room, for his siblings, for his allowance, for his studies, for his toys, for his schedule, and then his sex life. You don't start responsibility at 16. It starts very early. For example, when I was growing up, my father opened a mutual fund account for me. And every year on my birthday, he explained to me, this is how much money you have in your account. But if you make a baby, all your money is going to take care of your child. Should it be any different? If I enjoy making it, should I also take care of it? So my oldest son, who's 15, I've been doing the same thing with him, the 9-year-old and the 15-year-old. So he told me last year, he said, Daddy, this money looks so good to me. I just decided I'm not ever making me a baby. I'm keeping all my money to myself. But the point is, the boy understands responsibility. He understands if I make a baby, you will take care of it. There are mothers who know their son impregnated some girl on the same block, and they say, well, you know, boys will be boys. They will be whatever you let them be. I want to pause now. Explain this. Why are some mothers raising their daughters and loving their sons? Did you grow up in a household where you did more work if you're the sister than your brothers did? Why is that? And you know what else I believe? I believe that child rearing has a lot to determine in marriage. In other words, marrying a mama's boy is a very critical mistake. Because they can always go back to their mamas. Son, your room is just the way it always was. Got your favorite pound cake whenever you want to get there. It is terrible marrying a mama's boy. Comments. It's my water break. Give me some feedback on mothers with their sons. What do you think of my analysis?
It's devastating. It's on target.
Any other concerns about mothers and their sons?
The boys will be boys is real bad.
Right.
That's exactly where you keep them as boys.
Right.
Where you teach them to be responsible. They were supposed to be men. Well, more apt to be anyway. But a lot of mothers.
You know, the shortage of men in the church, that can be corrected by taking our sons to church. The sons can stay home. It's optional to them, but not the daughters. In terms of playing outside, daughters in at a certain hour. The sons all night long. Double standards. Make the daughters stay, but not the sons. See, my point is, if black women, I'm coming right to you, if black women know what problems they have with their own black man, why don't they correct it with your son? See, if you know what the problems are with black men, your little son, that's somebody else's husband. All what you know needs to be done, put that into your son. Right, why perpetuate if you really love your sisters? If you really love your sisters, correct the problem with your son. Yes, sir.
Isn't it hard to do though? Because the mother loves the child so much, and it hurts the mother to whoop the child and see the child hurt, so the child will continue to rule.
But that's interesting. They love their daughters too, but they whip their daughters.
The phenomenon is that the mothers are also spoiling some daughters.
True, but you don't spoil some daughters, and we don't have enough of these men there to do it. Yeah. Fathers, that's my baby. In other words, it's very interesting. See, when the father's there, see, it's something about a black man or father seeing this male, his same size, sitting on his sofa, eating up all the food. Boy, you gotta go. But see, his daughter can stay there as long as she wants. But see, the mother knows the daughter. And so the mother, you gotta go too. See, mothers make the daughters go, and fathers make the sons go. But when the father's not there, there's nobody to make the son go. Yes, one more, then we gotta go on. Yes, ma'am.
I also think it has something to do with the norms that are set in the system, too. And we try to emulate those as black people. Saying, for example, I was brought up on a farm and everybody worked together. But then in society now says the male has a role, the girl has a role. So the parents try to perpetuate that.
Correct. And what's sad about that is you can't fault the black man who you married not wanting to wash dishes. He wasn't forced to wash dishes at home. So you can't fault him when he marries you. You have to teach him early. Teach him early. Next issue, female teachers. We're also very concerned about female teachers. Remember, the exact percentage is 83% in the elementary grades. The number of black children in public schools, 17%. But black children are 41% of all the special ed children. Now, 17 doesn't equal 41. LD, learning disabled, EMR, educational mentally retarded, BD, behavior disorder. It gets worse. If a black child is going to be labeled special ed, 85% of the time it's going to be a black boy. Why is it not 50-50 black boy, black girl? Well, the reason may not be with just black children, Bill Moyers and Patrick Monahan. It may be up here at the top. It may be that female teachers may not know that boys are different than girls. You all didn't know that, didn't you? That boys are different than girls. I only want the women to answer. The men know they're different. I want to now hear the women to share with us what are some of the differences between boys and girls in the classroom. Because only when you know what the differences are can you then change your methodology to meet the needs of their learning styles. Yeah.
It's just more inquisitive.
Okay, so boys. What else? More aggressive. Come on now, go and explain what they do. Go ahead.
I think the boys are more egotistical.
Okay, so large ego.
Large ego.
Got a good group. Any others?
They're not quite as willing to please either as little girls.
Okay, so less cooperative. And we just want to add a few more because of time. 3 and 4, we find the boys more aggressive, are more athletically inclined, have a shorter attention span, a slower maturation rate, as you said, are less cooperative, are larger than the girls, influenced more by their peer group, more advanced gross motor than fine motor, not as neat as girls, are louder than girls, like wearing hats on their heads, have a different walk, have a larger ego, and last but not least, play the dozens more than girls. You know how many teachers, especially white teachers, white female teachers, don't know what the dozens are, don't know what signifying is? Now remember, we live in a world controlled by men. Males want to find out who's the best, or as they say, who's the baddest. Now remember, in school, the rule is you can't fight, but they still want to find out who's the best. They create a new game called dozens, signifying. It is a verbal word game of the most prized person in the Black community. Now, who's the most prized person in the Black community? Your mama. We're going to talk about your mama right now. I saw your mama on the railroad track, looked at her and said, ooh, get back. It's a verbal word game. Now, the game is designed, it's a verbal word game of the most prized person, your mama. Now, if you break down and start fighting, you getting kicked out of school, so I automatically win. If you break down and start crying, again, I automatically win. Now, before I go on, do you know how many Black boys have been suspended or placed in a special area because they were playing the dozens? Do you know how many teachers don't understand those same 2 Black boys who were playing the dozens, really getting down each other's mamas, were the best of friends 2 seconds later? Exactly. They didn't understand the culture. Now, don't misquote me. I'm not condoning the dozens nor Black English, but they both exist. And if you want to move a child from one to the other, it may not be what you say. It may be how you're saying it. Thanks. In other words, Black English. First day of school, 5-year-old girl walks into your classroom, speaking what she heard, Black English. When you condemn the language, you've done more than condemn the language. You're now destroying the child's self-esteem. The language is legitimate, has different rules to it. It exists, legitimate rules to it. And if you want to move a child from Black English to standardized English, you don't condemn him. You make him feel good where he is. If you went on Albert, there's some skills to playing the dozens. I'm a former teacher, and I had some very good dozen players. There are some skills to playing the dozens. First of all, you have to have an expanding vocabulary. You have to have the ability to make words rhyme. You have to have quick thinking skills. You have to be comfortable with public speaking. And I knew that. So I used to tell Willie, my best student, Willie, if you were that good playing the dozens, making words rhyme, vocabulary, all alike, I want you to be the MC at all my programs. I want you in my drama department or my spelling bee team. In other words, I stroked him. I made him feel good where he was. And then he was willing to give me those skills in my classroom.
Debate team, yeah.
But the real issue is, do we let these boys know we respect their culture? Because if you condemn it, they will fight you every step of the way. And you know what else they will do? They will also fight you in what we call the showdown. The showdown between Black boys and female teachers. You see, Black boys don't know when they're men. And Black men have not made it clear to them when they become men. So they think taking a female teacher one-on-one is going to make them a man, especially around 4th grade. From 4th grade on, they want to find out who's in charge of the class. It's called a showdown. There are numerous options in the showdown between a Black male and a white and a female teacher. Showdown number 1. She says, sit down, very unassertive. Well, Willie may sit down, but it may be late on in the afternoon. Willie wins showdown number 1. Showdown number 2. She responds to Willie some of the time, but not all the time. She's inconsistent. Well, I believe Willie wins each one of those she does not respond to. Showdown number 3. She said, I'm going to suspend you or place you in special ed. Well, he may lose to the assistant principal or special ed placement, but he did not do what she said. He wins showdown number 3. Showdown number 4. She says very assertively, sit down now. You know how the good ones do it? They look at you. Strong eye contact. They look you back in line. And she wins showdown number 4. Showdown number 5. She responds to Willie each and every time. She's consistent. And she's winning each one of those showdowns. Then the last one, a friend of mine in Chicago told me she had a boy who thought he was so bad, he was not going to stand up. He was going to run to class sitting down. He's going to make her nervous. He's going to look at her and smile at her. So every time Audrey looked at him, he looked back and smiled. But then Audrey would look back with the same strength and smile. This went on all day long. Willie looked and smiled. Audrey would look back and smile. At the end of class, so many words, Willie came to Audrey and said, okay, I understand that you are in charge of this class. But the reason is she's done three things well. She, first of all, loves him, and he knows that. She respects him, and he knows that.
Yep.
And she also respects his culture, and he knows that.
Yep.
Because of that, there is no showdown, because he knows that she is in charge of the class.
Yep.
What I'm getting at, to return back to this, if you know that boys have a shorter attention span, what should that do to your lesson? Make it shorter or make it more interesting?
Yep.
If you understand that boys are more advanced gross motor, fine motor, what should you allow more in your classes? More hands-on learning activities. In other words, my point is, if you understand that boys have different learning styles, rather than taking them out of your class and put them in special ed, why don't you alter your learning styles, your methodology? But you know what I'm saying? Most principals know that 5% of their teachers make over 30% of the referrals. If that's the case, why remove the child? Why don't you remove the teacher? How is the child doing so well in third grade with a good teacher and now labeled EMR in fourth grade? It may not be the child. It may be the teacher.
Maybe the teacher.
It's really a shame we can't stay on this longer on learning styles. Hyperactivity, that's a value judgment. If you know what hyper is, God must have told you what normal is. Hyper is a value judgment. It may not be that blind boys are hyperactive. It may be the lesson plans are simply too slow.
Yep.
Think about that the next time you want to place a child in special ed. Some other issues. I want to wrap up with regards to what is the conspiracy to destroy black boys. I believe the conspiracy is made up of white male supremacy, institutional racism, lack of black male role models, the male socialization process, parental apathy and double standards, low teacher expectations, a female designed classroom, a distorted media, and an influential peer group. In terms of the question of what is the conspiracy, I know you can't take all those down the way I gave them to you, so please read the book. I won't repeat them again, but those are the major factors that make up what is the conspiracy to destroy black boys. Male supremacy, institutional racism, lack of male role models, male socialization process, parental apathy, raising their daughters and loving their sons, low teacher expectations, a female designed classroom, a distorted media, and an influential peer group. Now, what I want to begin to look at is, what can the home do to stop the conspiracy to destroy black boys? It's not enough to describe it. Remember, the book is called Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. I want to look at it from the home, from the classroom, from the community, and then we'll give you the Donna Willie theory, or the Donna Kathy theory and the Eddie Willie theory. In terms of the home, in order to stop this conspiracy, we must first of all become aware. I believe the first way to solve any problem is to know the problem exists, to study. We have got to study more. And then we, especially women, have got to admit that boys need role models, especially male role models. And after we admit that, then we need to identify some male role models that will play that kind of position with our boys. And please don't lie to me and say you don't know him. In other words, on your block, in your extended family, where you work at, please don't say you don't know at least one positive black male. In other words, just because the biological father is not there, does not mean there's not some other black men available. We believe in extended family concept. We also want you to set a contract on what this man will do with your son on an ongoing, regular basis. And for the fathers, please quit taking your sons only to the ball game and to the zoo. It's amazing. Fathers take their sons to the zoo and to a ball game. When it's time to go to the grocery store or to the barbershop, go with your mom. In other words, I believe that black boys are an awful lot by seeing you in very natural situations, at the oil change, at the barbershop, just talking smack on the street. So please quit thinking that you can only interact with your children in some child-centered activities. They need to see what you do on an ongoing, regular basis. We must also work on black boys' fine motor development. In other words, early on in kindergarten, we're labeling black boys as being behind because the girls work with crayons, pencils, and scissors. The boys have been working with trucks. We have to work on black boys' fine motor development. We also have to work on a non-sexist household. In other words, teach your son how to cook, how to sew, how to clean. We also recommend you teach your son sex education and before 12 years of age. The studies show we're teaching children sex ed after they've already started. It should be before, not after. They've already made a baby after 12 and 13. We have to work on that. We must also monitor the peer group. You know, good parents have always done a number of things well with the peer group. First of all, good parents know who their children's friends are. They invite them over to get to know them better. Yep. And many times parents program a peer group to make sure their child runs the right group. Yep. My parents enrolled me on a track team. I had to run cross country, indoor, and outdoor track. Rather than running around a game, they had me running around the track. My parents did that intentionally to make sure. Good parents also monitor television. TV cannot be turned on by itself. Quit blaming the television set. We must also look at us. And then last but not least, we must listen to our children. Absolutely. Many times they tell me, my parents don't listen to. That's why the peer group is winning. The peer group listens. Many times we don't. You know, the average father only spends 7 minutes with his children. The average mother, 34 minutes. Wow. That's a tragedy. But if that's all you're spending, make sure it's quality time. Make sure you're listening to them. We recommend these strategies for the home. For the school, we recommend the following. First of all, again, we always believe in study. You must first of all become aware there's a conspiracy to destroy black boys. After that, we must increase male teachers. My first desire is to increase male staff. My second one would be those in the upper grades, at least for 1 year to teach in the lower grades. In other words, what I recommend is that we have more black men before 4th grade, or at least in the intermediate division. Yeah. In addition to that, if we cannot get this, we want more black role models coming into the school. If we cannot get them on staff, the least we can do is invite black men in. I encourage black men to volunteer in your local school because the men are not there, so we need to have you there. In addition to that, we also want to change, some of the changes, the triangle, to change the methodology, to begin to use a right brain learning activities. In other words, more hands-on learning objects in terms of fine arts, artifacts, pictures, and the like. We also recommend that we emphasize academics over athletics. We must give more glory to academic achievement than we do athletic achievement. Yep. These are the strategies we recommend for the school. To one, study it, increase male teachers, increase role models, look at a right brain learning style, and emphasize academics over athletics. Lastly, for solutions, we also want to look at the community. The community has a program to destroy black boys. We must have one to protect and develop black boys. One program is the Boy Scouts. It's an excellent program. It teaches black boys skills. But the problem is the Boy Scout master may be homosexual, may not know black history. The Boy Scouts may be nothing more than a junior army, but it's an excellent program. It teaches black boys skills, but it may not do anything else. Another program is Big Brothers, an excellent concept. It gives black males a role model, but the big brother may be homosexual, may not know black history. And so the conspiracy is going to continue. What we recommend is you blend Boy Scouts skills, blend Big Brothers, role models, into an African program called SIMBA, S-I-M-B-A, SIMBA. It's the African word for young lion. And we now have 17 SIMBA chapters across the country. These are programs where black men are not talking about the problem, they are working on it. These are black men who organize themselves to work with black boys, to teach them skills, give them a role model, teach them black culture, and the major objective to go through the rites of passage in the manhood. In my church in Chicago, we have a SIMBA program where in February during Black History Month or during December during Kwanzaa, we take our boys who've gone through our criteria and through a special ceremony called the rites of passage. I repeat, you have some black men talking about what they are going to do. You have some black men organized to begin to work on that kind of issue. We recommend SIMBA. It blends all three of those together. Closing point, and then we'll open up for some questions. Donna and Kathy, I mentioned at the very outset that one of every two husbands physically abuses his wife. Now, many thought the problem was only with the men who did the beating. There's more to it than that. You see, any respectable woman will make it very clear to her man, you put a hand on me, and either I'm leaving or you better not go to sleep. There are two kind of women in America, and they go by the names of Donna and Kathy. You see, I sincerely believe this. I believe that men know who to be and who not to. I believe that. And I believe that men are not going to respect women until women, first of all, respect themselves. Amen. And there are two kind of women in America, Donna and Kathy. Now Donna feels very good about herself. She would like to have a man. She don't have to have one. I mean, the son will still shine. God will still be first in her life. Donna wants one. She ain't got to have one. But then you get Kathy. Taking me your way comes through the door with another woman, with a bottle, with a ball of fist. All Kathy wants is a man, and a half a man will do. I want all the Catholics to raise their hands. You know, I've yet across the country see a sister admit to me that she's a Catholic. You know what they tell me? They say, Jawanza, well, I'm a Donald during the weekday, but I'm a Catholic on the weekend. Well, I'm Donald summertime and the Catholic the other hand. It's hard being Donald in America when you have two women for every one man. It's easy to lower your standards. If you want to be a Catholic in America, the theory goes like this. For every sister we can get to quit acting like Catholics and to begin to act like Donald, what this means is less Catholics and more Donalds. As a result of having fewer Catholics and more Donalds, we will have fewer brothers taking advantage of women like Kathy. Now to expect more women like Donna. I am tired of women always blaming the brothers. The last time I looked, you still determined who gets your phone number, who takes you out, and every step along the way. It's hard being a Donna in America. If you want to be a Donna, there may be some lonely Friday and Saturday nights. But if you believe in you, you'll have peace of mind. If you want to be a Donna in America, it means you go back to school, get off of welfare, learn you a skill for a career to take care of yourself. If you want to be a Donna in America, it means you will quit watching them soap operas all day long, especially all of my children, and begin to take care of your own. If you want to be a Donna in America, it means you will quit eating those cookies and chocolates all evening long. You know, the rumor is the older women get, the bigger you get. Watch what you eat and exercise. And then last but not least, if you want to be a Donna in America, you need to put God first in your life. You didn't know? It takes longer for boys to grow up. And some boys never grow up. But rather than marrying a boy as a Catholic making a mistake, we encourage you to wait. But while you're waiting, don't complain. Keep developing yourself. So when the brothers finally get ready, you'll be ready too. A good marriage still takes two and not one. Now, as you well know, Glenn, we used to end with the Donna Catholic theory. But the women got on our case in Jawanza. If you're going to talk about the conspiracy to destroy black boys, don't end it talking about us. End it where you started it, with the brothers. So I now want to give you the Eddie Willie theory. Eddie is dedicated to my father. His name is Eddie, and I believe he's a very strong example of a black man. There are two kind of men in America, Eddie and Willie. Willie makes babies. Eddie takes care of them. In other words, Willie believes it's not the quality, it's the quantity. Willie is made up a lot of babies. Eddie believes in not only taking care of them, he hugs them. He believes that men should hug their children. Works with them on their homework. Eddie takes care of them. Willie makes them. Point number one. Point number two, Willie only works, and maybe not even then, outside the house. Eddie works inside and outside. In other words, Willie may cut the grass. He may rake leaves, but he definitely is not working inside the house because men work outside and women work inside, but not Eddie. Eddie believes in whatever it takes. Washing dishes, making dinner, whatever it takes. And then last but not least, Willie is very insecure. And so Willie verbally and physically abuses his woman, but not Eddie. Eddie is very insecure. In other words, Eddie encourages a woman to go back to school, to get a promotion on her job. Eddie encourages his woman to go to church. You know what I even heard? Eddie goes to church with her. And the reason is Eddie is his wife's best friend. And because of that, he understands that putting his woman down is not the key. The key is feeling good about yourself. When you feel good about yourself, there's no need to put anybody down. I want all the Donalds and all the Eddies to stand up and give yourselves a very strong round of applause.
All right. And that concludes that portion of things. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I did. It took me a long time. Isn't on point? Oh no, let me try to go back up and see if we had any trolls. I'm not seeing any. And if you guys, I hadn't even realized it was going to be 2 hours, but if you have been with me from beginning to end, thank you so much for listening to this audio / sometimes video. But like I said, I had to go back and forth because I'm the only one moderating right now. You know, folks be busy on Saturday, but nevertheless, I really want to share this with you guys. Give me 1 second. Let me get back to this other screen here so I can say my closing words. So anyway, yeah, I really want to share this with you guys, because I have been trying to find this video for a very long time. Um, and it's amazing how some things change, but mostly they stay the same. Do you see what I'm saying? And everything that he said, in my opinion, that was relevant to him in 1987 is still relevant, in my opinion, even to this day. Thank you, Make It Happen. Make It Happen said I'm a rewatch. Thank you so much. And I really want to share this on Friday so that you guys could get a chance to enjoy it, because like I said, everything he said from the educational system and to how we should rear our boys educationally, as well at home as well as in school. I think it's relevant right today. And the one thing that I find sad is that when I was in school, for instance, a lot of the things that he was talking about, a lot of those good teachers that he was talking about, we had those good teachers in school. Do you see what I'm saying? But not so much nowadays. You don't have those teachers that care about you, the way that they used to care about you nowadays. That nowadays they just want to go home. I mean, they just want to come to school, do their job, go home and start again the next day. Do you see what I'm saying? And back then, I think the educational system, the public educational system, has pretty much went downhill, especially as it pertains to little black boys and little black girls. But what if these things would have been implemented even to this day? How far along could we be as far as the educational in school educational process? How far along could we be? With our children, especially if our children have to. Oh shoot! Oh Lord, I done did something. Sorry about that, guys. I almost messed up my thing. How far along would we have been? And I hate that. The educational system has dissolved the way it has, but we can still implement these things in our homes. Do you see what I'm saying? And when he was talking about the relationship between the man and the woman, the Donna and the Kathy and the Eddie and the Willie, we have those same archetypes in the community today, like we did, back then. And so that's why I really want to share this with you guys. We know that there has forever been a conspiracy to destroy our black boys. We call it, what do we call it nowadays? The school to prison pipeline. Do you see what I'm saying? It starts in school. They start to beat your child down, or your child, because he's behind or because he's hyperactive, because they don't take time to identify the individual needs for your child. They may be put in something like special education when they don't need to be in special education at all. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's another reason why I want to share this with you guys. And that's pretty much all I got. I hope you guys got something out of it. Like I said, I know it wasn't many of us, but thank you guys for listening to this video. If you haven't heard it from the beginning, please go back and listen. It's the weekend. Take a moment to listen. I mean, to take a listen. And thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you, everybody. Oh, no, I appreciate you guys being interactive. Hoodoo Head, Rapsmith, and Light One, Red Snapper, hey. Making It Happen, Manny, Emmanuel. Thank you all for joining me so much. God's grace was here. I don't know if she still is. Just everybody. I think I got everybody. And so yeah, I really want to share this with you guys. I hope you guys got something out of it. Do you see what I'm saying? So we are going to get off of here because I know you guys have other things to do today. Do you see what I'm saying? And I hope you guys appreciate it. Hit you you're very welcome. Oh no, thank you so much. And I thank you guys for appreciating the content as well. If you haven't, hit the like button on your way out the door. Maybe we can get the if we can get the likes up, the video will be put out more. Maybe more people will take an interest in what Dr. Kunjufu had to say, as well as add their own commentary and input, as to this type of conversation. We don't always find it entertaining to deal with these types of subjects. But if you really are concerned about your community and moreover the children and the rearing of the children in your community, because they are the future leaders of the community, moreover, of this world, you know what I mean? You will really want to, put some thought into every aspect of your child's upbringing. And for that reason, I want to share this video with you guys. There's so much going on in this world. These kids today have so much going on with them, and make it so bad. On top of everything that he said we needed to monitor in the video, you have, in today's terms, you have to monitor social media. Do you see what I'm saying? You never want social media to be raising your kids, because it could go either, everything on social media honestly is very toxic. As far as some kids are being bullied to the point of where they commit suicide. Some adults, it's a toxic, social media is so toxic that even some adults can't handle social media. Do you see what I'm saying? And we really have to monitor that, in my opinion. But I'm going to get off of here. This video was 2 hours long. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm going to be coming back. I don't know if it's, maybe I'll do it tomorrow because this video is so long. But there's something else that I want to talk about, especially pertaining to negative stereotypes, perpetrated in the media, the propagandized machine, when it ramps up to destroy the masculinity and the image of the black man. Do you see what I'm saying? And so to the point to where now it's just pretty much very unfortunate to me. So anyway, I'm gonna come back and talk about that. Love you guys. You guys have a nice day. Don't forget to smile. Don't forget to smile at somebody. And never, ever, ever forget to love your beautiful self. I'm going to talk to you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye. Peace. And thanks for joining me, guys. Bye-bye.